These are the scholars I'm going to be using today. Dr. John Wansborough, head of School of Oriental and African Studies at the University of London. He was the one that blew open this whole thing in 1977 and 1978 with two books called Quranic Studies and Sectarian Milieu. Suggested that we've got a real problem with trusting most everything we know about who Muhammad was, what the Quran was, what the city called Mecca, and of course, how it began. Dr. Gerald Haunting is the man that I studied at SOAS there in 1994. When I heard it for the first time, I'd already had a master's degree in Islamic studies and I knew nothing about this material. It wasn't being taught in America. It was only being taught in the University of London and in Cambridge and in Oxford. Dr. Patricia Corona, who was my supervisor when I started my doctorate, she reads and writes 15 languages, all archaic languages. These are lost languages. That's why she's so dangerous, because she goes back to the original documents, reads them in their original form, and she never translates any of them because she doesn't want Muslims to read what she found. Nonetheless, she was head of department at Oxford University when she came out with Meccan Trade in the Rise of Islam in 1987, got a death threat for writing that book, had to move to Cambridge University. That's where I got to know her. And then she finally finished up at Princeton University, where she just died just before Christmas. So we no longer have her around. But she has probably done some of the most damaging work on Mecca. We're going to introduce her material. She's from Denmark. Dr. Andrew Rippon out of Calgary did probably the best work of taking this difficult material and bringing it down to layman's terminology. Dr. Robert Hoyland out of Oxford University, he's done the best material of looking and seeing exactly what was being written about these Arabs during the 7th century. And so he's the one that has written concerning exactly what other people were saying about these people that existed at that time. Dr. Yehuda Neva out of University of Jerusalem has done the best material on looking at the earliest inscriptions. We're going to introduce some of his material later, and then the German school, Dr. Lulling, Dr. Gerd Puyn, Dr. von Bothmer, Dr. Oleh, have done the best work in the world on the earliest manuscripts. We're going to look at some of their findings of what they found, what they're now coming up with the manuscripts, the Quranic manuscripts. Then there's two books that have just come out in Britain, one by Dr. Tom Holland, who's not really, he's not an Islamicist, he's nothing more than a good storyteller. But he's a historian. He has 3 already bestsellers, and that's why he decided to take and go beyond Persian Fire and Rubicon. He decided to go to the next step. Well, what came after the Byzantine Empire? What came after the Sassanid Empire? It was the Muslim Empire. And he started in 2006, and for 6 years. He usually writes a book in 3 years. This took him 6 years because he couldn't find any sources. We had to give him all his sources. And that's why he came out with this book in 2012, In the Shadow of the Sword. If you want to read one book that actually decimates and explains all this material, read that book. Read the first 100 pages and then jump to the last and read the last 100 pages, and you get to know anything you need to know. Now, he did a documentary called Islam, the Untold Story. He put it on Channel 4 in August of 2012, which summarized his primary themes, but he didn't come to any conclusions. He purposely did not want to because he knew it would infuriate the Muslims. That documentary has only been shown once. Channel 4 would not show it a second time because of all the furore coming from the Muslim world. And that's why, if you want it, I have it right here on my computer. You can have it, take it home with you, and see it, watch it. It's only an hour and a half long. It summarizes much of what we're going to go through today. And then Dr. Dan Gibson has probably done the best work on looking at the geography. So let's look in some of their material. This is what they found. This is what all these scholars put together. You've seen all their names. This is the conclusions they're coming to. First of all, the first Arab inscription of the name Muhammad is not till 691. Muhammad died in 632. Do you see a problem there? Why did these people, if this is their prophet, if this is their greatest prophet, why didn't they mention him in any Arab inscription? We don't see any reference to his name. Outside of Arab texts, we do have reference to his name, but not within Arab inscriptions. The first reference to people called Muslims is not till the 690. Well, hold on a minute. So who were these people that were taking over Basra, Baghdad, Damascus, Jerusalem, and Cairo, who were moving right across North Africa and moved from Spain in the west? Who are they? Well, they did call themselves things. They were actually conquering. They call themselves the Saracens. They are known as the Hagarenes in the line of Hagar. They're known as the Ishmaelites in the line of Ishmael. They're known as the Maghreb because they come from the Maghreb. They're known as the Muhajirun, the people who are in Hijr, people who are in Exodus, like nomadic people. These are the names they call themselves, but they never call themselves Muslims. Yet these were the first Muslims, we thought. We've been told that's the narrative we've always been given. So why didn't they call themselves that in their own inscriptions? The first reference to Islam is not till the Dome of the Rock, introduced by Abdul Malik in 691. That's 60 years after Muhammad died. And the first reference to a city called Mecca is not till 741. Think that through. Okay, you thought it through, we'll go on. The first biography of Muhammad with an Islamic source is not till 833. Now, let's put this all together. These are their conclusions. How did they come to their conclusions? Let's go through it and let's remember. Now, remember, at the time that we're looking at to begin with, in 661, this is when the Umayyad period starts. That's how much of the world Islam controlled. So they controlled the 5 great cities of the Levant. These were cities that were sophisticated. They had libraries. They could read and write. There's no reason in the world not to have things written down, even as late as 661. Dr. Gan Gibson, when he looked around, he noticed that when you look at the Quran, and take a look at the Quran and look at all the geographical locations in the Quran. There are 65 geographical locations listed in the Quran. Over and over again, you find that this prophet, interestingly, it only mentions that he's a prophet in Arabic. It doesn't give him a name. You will find Muhammad's name in Arabic only 4 times in the Quran. But he's known as the prophet who lives in a city, a settlement, but it doesn't give the name of the city. It doesn't give the name of the settlement except for once. And that's in Surah 48, ayah 28. So who is this man and where does he live? Well, we do know that he has daily contact with people from Ud. 23 times he keeps on coming in contact with people from Ud. 24 times he has contact with people from Thamud. 7 times these people from Midian, which means he has daily contact with these people from these 3 different tribes. So where are these tribes? Take a look where they are on the map. They're way up here. Mecca's way down here. There's 600 miles between them. How did he have contact with people that are 600 miles away? Curious, isn't it? That's the first problem. Secondly, if he's so far away, then what are we going to do with Mecca? This is the million-dollar question. We do read about it in Surah 48, ayah 24. I said verse 28. It should be verse 24. Surah 48, ayah 24. This is the only reference to Mecca in the entire Quran. Yet it's such an important city. Why? Because when Adam and Eve were thrown out of the Garden of Eden, according to that, they're up in space. That's in Surah 7. They were thrown down, according to the traditions, to this place called Mecca. So it would be the first settlement in the history of mankind. There is no one earlier than Adam and Eve, right? It's where Abraham was living in Surah 21. If you look at Surah 21, he is in Mecca. I had no idea Abraham came from Mecca. But according to the Quran, that's where he lived. He goes into the Kaaba and destroys all the idols in the Kaaba. They throw him into a fiery pit. And then he's saved by an angel of the Lord. That sounds like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. But what's it doing and what's that say about Mecca? That means at least Mecca was in existence in 1900 BC when Abraham was living, right? And Mecca is the center of trade, north, south, east, and west, according to all the traditions. This is called the trade route theory. Trade route theory made popular by Montgomery Watt. Now, we do know quite a bit about this place where this prophet lived. Though it doesn't give it a name, we do know that it's in a valley, that it has a stream going through it, it has a parallel valley, it has a pillar of salt right outside, which this prophet goes by in the morning and comes back in the evening. Possibly, obviously referring to the wife of Lot, who turns to a pillar of salt. It has fields, trees, grass, clay, loam. It has olive trees. That's right there. Should have red flags. And that there's a mountains overlooking the Kaaba. The problem is, Mecca is not in a valley. It does not have stream going through it. It doesn't have any water. It only has one well, the Zamzam well. Cannot even accommodate the caravans that went there. It does not have a pillar of salt. There are no fields, trees, grass, clay, loam, or olive trees. There are no olive trees except for the Mediterranean world, 600 miles further north. There have never been olive trees in Arabia. So you can see there's a problem here. Because wherever this place is, it cannot be Mecca. So, what do we know about Mecca? I've just told you all that, so we'll go beyond that. You can come back to that. Those are all the things I just mentioned. Take a look at a map from the 7th century. This is a Byzantine map of the trade routes. Where is Mecca on that map? You notice? If it's the center of trade, if it's one of the greatest cities in the history of mankind, if it's the oldest city in the history of mankind, why is it not on any map? That's just a Byzantine map from the 7th century. Take a look at this map. This is the trade route. Again, look or see where Mecca should be. Mecca should be right there. It's not on this map either from the 7th century. But look at what is at the center of trade. We'll come back to that. Dr. Patricia Corona noticed this, and of course she was curious because she looked at this map, which is from the 7th century, and she noticed that all the trade would have come from India over here and China over here, and would have come right up through the Persian Gulf to get over to the Mediterranean world. The problem was the Sassanids here were warring with the Byzantines here. For 200 years they warred back and forth between the 5th, 6th, up to the 7th century, which shut down the trade going through here. It had to be redirected across the Arabian Sea down to Aden right there. And then from Aden it went right across, up across the western plateau of Arabia, from Aden, going up to Najran, Sana, up to Taif, down to Mecca, according to the traditions, back up to Yathrib, to Tabuk, Khaybar, and then on up to Gaza. Now, my 10-year-old son saw a problem with that. Let's see if any of you can see a problem. Those of you here last year, don't mention it. What problem do you see with that theory right there? Why wouldn't they unload it where? In Aden?
Yeah, down there.
Okay, Aden. Why don't they just go up what? Good man. He's as good as my 10-year-old son. Absolutely. It's a no-brainer. If you're already on board ship and you've come off the west coast of India, why in the world would you take it across the Arabian Sea, unload it at Aden, go 1,250 miles overland, when you know that a ton of goods for going only 50 miles by land is the same price as going 1,250 miles by sea? That's why we do everything by sea today. Even today in the 21st century, we send everything by ship. So why didn't they keep it and go right up the Red Sea? So Dr. Patricia Corona, reading and writing 15 languages, goes back and decides to investigate from the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th century, reading the original documents to see if this was true. And guess what she found? All the trade was maritime. None of it went through Arabia. There was no Arab name anywhere on any of the trading documents here on the West Coast. All the names that she could find came from here, Eritrea, Africa. They were the ones that loved to go on boats. The Arabs hated boats. That's why you don't see any ports on the western the side of Arabia. They were all camel herders. They were people that were nomadic. They were desert nomadic people. That's why there was no maritime trade with any Arab names. So this whole trade route theory suddenly was up in question. And then she looked at it a little more carefully, and if you notice, I don't know if you can tell, but when it gets up to Taif here, it then goes down off the western plateau to get down to Mecca, 1,000 meters, and then it has to go back up 1,000 meters to get back up to Yathrib. Mecca's not even on the trade route. The Arabian existing trade route, it's not even on that trade route, she noticed. Why had no one noticed that? For 1,400 years, no one picked that up. She picked it up and wrote a book about it. And she just destroyed any notion of any trade route because she just quoted reference after reference. She found that here in Ctesiphon, which is now today Baghdad, that's the archaic name for Baghdad, they came down here to Yathrib, which is now Medina, and they found silver. They had silver mines there, and they went down to Taif, and they talk about going down to the south. No reference to any place called Mecca. Couldn't find any reference to Mecca. None. None at all. Until 741. 741 is the first reference she could find for Mecca. It's in the Apocalypse de Pseudo-Methodius Continuato Byzantia Arabica. Muhammad died in 632. Can you see the problem? That's over 100 years later. Obviously, there is a problem with Mecca. We just don't have any reference to it. Look at modern day Mecca. Look what they're doing now. The 4th largest building, tallest building in the world. That huge clock tower. That is 45 feet across, that face of that clock tower. They're going to make it Meccan Mean Time. They are now transforming Mecca. They've designed it very similar to Big Ben, and they want to take Greenwich Mean Time and bring it over to Meccan Mean Time, MMT, instead of GMT. But take a look what they're doing. That's what they plan to do with Mecca. They're cementing over the entire city. That's Muhammad's house. They've now cemented that over. That's Khadija, Muhammad's wife's house. They've cemented that over. Look at all the cranes. They're going to make 62 of these skyscrapers. Why do you think they're cementing everything up? They now know what we know. There is no history there. And what best to hide the history than to cement it all up so that nobody can investigate how old Mecca is.